Hey there, boys and girls. Welcome to this week's episode of Hollow Weekly. Nick and George here with how low can we go at 55%. House of Frankenstein.
1944's House of Frankenstein. A little down the road in the monster mashup catalog, because I think Frankenstein meets the Wolfman was first.
Well, let me tell you what I was saying before we started recording.
Yes.
It made me really dislike. I didn't. Did you see the new Penny Dreadful trailer?
I did not see it.
It doesn't look.
Doesn't look not the biggest surprise.
Doesn't look that good.
Not the biggest surprise.
No, it went from like all the monster mashups to like this like. And you know what's funny is I think coming off the heels of Watchmen, because it's like 1930s Los Angeles, and it's about like race relations and like the rise of Nazi people, and
Sure.
like I thought like Watchmen sort of did that to like this year,
Right.
But like really fucking well,
Totally.
And so I'm like, well, if you're not gonna give us like the Mummy and I was
Right.
hoping they would bring in new monsters, and Venom in some
No,
new ways.
and that's the problem with a lot of this is if there's lag, like you planned this 2 years ago, but you had no idea that Watchmen was going to come and scoop your territory. So like that's
I know, and so now it's like now it's Penny Dreadful, but like everything you liked about it gone. I'm like, but they do have Nathan Lane and some other people, but like I don't know.
Wait, let's just real quick do that with a couple other shows. So just real quick. So like, what would so like take everything out of Stranger Things that people like? What's left?
Eggo Waffles, Eggo Waffles,
The Eggo Waffle Show.
Winona Ryder.
The Eggo Waffle Hour. Oh yeah, that's unfortunate. Well, this movie actually. So I had seen this. It turns out in pieces a long, long time ago, but it's one of the very few main Universal horror movies I don't feel like I ever watched through start to finish until now for this podcast. And you hadn't seen it before, all right?
This is my first monster mashup.
Universal of the old ones, right?
Yeah.
And you love monster mashup creature features. It's like one of your biggest genres.
Yeah, I mean, like my Monster
spots.
Squad's like my favorite movie. That's like the gold standard of monster mashups, I think.
Totally. So, what do you think of 1944's House of Frankenstein?
It is the weirdest fucking movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's
first
a pretty weird movie.
First off, they did Drac dirty, and
Yep.
the one that my first note that I took was because we did we went and saw Frankenstein at the Egyptian Theater, and then we did The Body Snatcher, and we talked about how great Karloff was. He is like another class of actor compared to like everyone else in this movie.
Yeah, he's amazing. Well, I mean, in this movie, yeah. I mean, John Carradine is one of the most legendary actors of all time. So, like, there was acting talent in here, but you're right. Like, Karloff was really sure-footed.
Yeah.
And the rest of them felt like...
Everyone else felt like, this is a horror movie. He's like, watch me act, bitches.
Watch me act.
He was so good.
He was amazing. I thought, so this, let's just get this out on the table here. This is a profoundly strange film. First of all, it's like 3 movies in one. So this is almost an anthology film. Like in its structure.
Yeah.
I mean, they got rid of Dracula so fast that he showed up and he was gone. And I was
Can we
waiting
talk about Dracula for a second?
Yeah, of course. Good.
How come when he actually... 2 things. One, when he actually came back to life, Boris Karloff's character was just like... He like ho-checked him. He's like, listen, I will make sure the soil's here as long as you do what I need you to do. And Drax's like, absolutely, daddy. And
that was actually one of my favorite scenes because I loved the meeting of the villains, like the pact they were making. They made a deal with the devil with each other. It was like watching the devil make a deal with himself.
But no one freaked out.
Nope.
He didn't freak out. And then on top of that, can we talk about the fact that dude actually went to Transylvania and fucking dragged Dracula's corpse
He did.
around the country for
his
like
skeleton with
yeah,
a
for like
stake in
pennies.
it. Like, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
They were like treating people to the show. Hey, they didn't have Netflix back then. They were starving for entertainment.
That's true. You had to like look out your window and hope the horror wagon was coming around.
The
town.
horror wagon was pretty awesome. So here, let me. I want to talk actually about just broader in Universal structure, out of like House of Dracula and Son of Frankenstein, all the other movies, kind of like where this fits in. But before we do that, we just got to deal with the insanity that is this movie because I messaged you when I was watching it because the first third of this movie I think stands with almost anything from that era. I thought the first third of this movie was absolutely tremendous. We start with meeting Boris Karloff, which they started with strength, right? And when he's up at the chalkboard, like in that spooky shot with his diagram of like putting his brains and all kinds of random things, like what in his prison, and it was like really like his voice was, you know, really spooky and obviously, and then when it goes kind of from to their breakout scene, Karloff has got such understated menace going forward from that. One of my favorite things that happens in this movie is he convinces someone to do a murder. I'll remember backwards who it was.
Daniel.
Daniel. Sorry, he convinces Daniel to do a murder, and he, as soon as he's done, you can tell it's like a really kind of wrenching moment or whatever. There's this pause, and he's just like, now the driver. Like he's so relentless for 1944. I mean, I know even pre-code or whatever, they had a lot of brutal things going on. You know, people underestimate the impact of some of these older movies, but he played it like really quiet but determined. Like it was like crossing Hannibal Lecter with the Brain from Pinky and the Brain. Like
right.
He had a plan for world domination, and he was going to do it step by step by step by step, and all of that was amazing. And all of that sequence, all the way up until the movie goes full like Bourne Identity, and like there's coach chases and horses crashes.
A dude throws a torch at Frankenstein.
There's a high speed chase in this movie, and then I realized this is a pretty big budget movie. Like for them, this must have been.
It's weird because I think I saw where they put $0 towards the ending.
Well, I'm sure
because this movie's ending
that looks like what happened. But I looked it up; it was $354,000 in 1944. So this is a spectacle film, right? So, and then after the first third, the middle chunk, you get to meet Frankenstein, the Wolfman. The Wolfman coming back is amazing because that's Lon Chaney Jr. again, and you finally get a character playing the character you remember from all the Universal kind of like saga, because that's not what's happening elsewhere. Like Dracula's John Carradine, which you're not used to. Boris Karloff's not Frankenstein. So, and then the end, like you said, I actually thought the movie picked up towards the ending sequence, and then the actual ending is terrible because, spoilers, Hollywood was obsessed with the idea of quickscan for like 20 years, and like everything died in quicksand. There's a span of time where quicksand, and I looked, it's funny because we actually did this as a trivia on the Hello Weekly in the community, but Hollywood was obsessed with quicksand, one, because it really captured the imagination, but two, it was literally their cheapest special effect. It blew people's minds back then, but you needed to do virtually nothing to make it happen on the screen, right? So they wanted to work it into everything because it was easier than blowing up a castle or having a lightning storm or whatever. You just threw a bunch of people in a pit of mud and watched them drop. So,
and you know what's funny is Boris Karloff, before going under, he goes,
of course he does.
He's like,
I would too.
Suck.
No, he was in character. He's like, I'm going to stay down here and plot.
But this is a sequel to Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, right? So like that's where like it's picking up.
Yeah,
okay.
So there's continuity, but like it's a shared universe.
Because I didn't know what I was missing.
It's a shared universe, and there's no one had done it before, so there's a lot of loose ends and like weird things. One of the things that I kind of only knew in the back of my head, but I had to look up to confirm, is Lon Chaney Jr. is the only major actor in the Universal stable who played all four monsters in the original run. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you had people showing up playing different versions of themselves and opposite of themselves.
Available.
It got kind of crazy, like, you know, how that went down.
I wonder what they thought of that. Like, what did Boris Karloff think of, like, getting, like, playing the scientist?
Dollar signs is what he thought.
Yeah, that's probably what a lot of them thought.
Out, you know. Yeah. They were trying to do, like, good movies, obviously, but they were also... The pace at which they had to work back then makes what we do now really silly. I mean, Karloff had made... I don't know. I read somewhere he made some like 150 movies before he even broke in Frankenstein. Like these people were making 10, 12 movies a year.
Is crazy.
Right there. And you know, we look up on a screen and there's some years where I'm like, wait, is Angelina Jolie in every movie made this year? Like whatever. But it turns out it's only 3. And then when you go back and you look at Hollywood history, it's nothing compared to, you know, how they used to do it. But
that's very true. No, I liked the comedy in this film too. There was a lot of like really kind of like wacky moments. I thought one of the lines I really liked was when they were with Dracula and the guy's like, a glass of wine will warm my blood. And I was just, you can hear him licking his lips like, oh, better boy. And I did, aside from that weird scene when Dracula was looking through like with his bug eyes,
Yeah.
I thought the dude who played Dracula, like,
I mean, that's John motherfucking Carradine.
oh, so that's who that guy is.
He's a legend.
He was pretty cool. Like,
As a matter of fact, I would imagine, I don't know this for a fact. I should look it up before I say it, but I would imagine he's related tangentially or vaguely to David Carradine, to the guy who played in Kill Bill. So I mean, that's just a legendary family. They're like, they bring the acting chops. But here's the thing:
David, right?
Yeah. So, but what's amazing to me about all of that is true, right? But when you look at how they were building these movies back then, I can't tell if they were just completely nuts or if they were way ahead of their time, because it feels sort of modern to me. I'm used to old movies flowing like cat people. There's basically one or two plots. They basically go chronologically forward in order. And then, I mean, that's exactly why when Tarantino uncorked things like Pulp Fiction, or when other people when Memento came out from Nolan or whatever, that time jumps in the narrative, that's why it was so shocking, is because generally that wasn't done. But this movie is jumping back and forth in storylines and characters, and it's just, I don't know, it felt really modern, which is really
killing
weird.
off Dracula,
right? Yeah, in the middle of the friggin' movie.
You know what I really liked with him, because I thought he had a lot of stuff going on, Dracula, like I really liked the ring of the dead he had or whatever, and she was like, "Where'd you get this ring?" He's like, "You don't want to know where I got this
Right,
ring."
totally.
But I like those moments like that. I really loved. I think them killing off Dracula midway through the film is actually pretty cool. Like, I like the idea of them sort of using the monsters like however the fuck they want, like not having to stick to one script where Frankenstein gets created, the villagers get out there, even though that's how this one fucking ends.
Sure.
But just them playing around with the monsters is fun, because they're crazy characters.
Yes.
So like, don't stick to the script. Like, for some reason, there's like an ice cavern below this castle, and I'm just like, I'm there for it.
Yep, totally.
I loved it. And honestly, it made me want to go and watch Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and then like the Abbott and Costello ones.
Sure.
I don't know if they're gonna.
Well, we can talk about that. Let's put a pin in that, because I want to talk about it on the other side. But I want to do some justice to there are some really great things in this movie, right? So I thought, here's the problem. The problem with anthology films is you have so much less time to follow, develop, and get attached to characters. Mm-hmm. So basically everything was sped up in this movie. So all they did was rerun the Wolfman arc, right? He falls in love with a woman. But he's no good for people. He can't be around people he cares about. She's the one who has to, someone who cares about him has to put him down. I mean, it's literally, they just reran this.
So, did they have that awesome line where she told him, "Don't go barking at me," before she knew he was the Wolfman?
No, they did not.
All right, check.
But they totally Force Awakened the middle of this movie with the Wolfman, right? But what's kind of cool is, so first of all, Lon Chaney Jr. is so good that he was still able to get emotion across in that compressed time frame, which was impressive, because I thought I wasn't going to feel crap when he was struggling. And if he had 90 seconds in this movie to get the humanity of his character across, I would have been surprised. But he did it somehow.
He did a great job. In fact, the first scene when he wakes up and he's in human form, I totally it never clicked for me until then. But them casting Benicio del Toro in the remake, he looked just like him. I was like, oh, I get why they went there.
Totally.
Because at first I was like I thought they just had Benicio del Toro because he's Benicio del Toro. He's a great actor. Sure. But then when he got up, I was like, that looks just like him. Whoa, good job casting, directors.
You're like, that's totally
I'm like 10 years late, but good job, dude. Yeah, I think it's 2010. 10 years later.
We're later on this movie than we were on Wolfman 2010.
That's very true.
So that part is, I thought he did an incredible job. It wasn't so much for Frankenstein. I there just was not enough time to get any kind of attachment to him. Glenn Strange's performance was great, and it turns out he was really, really tutored and schooled by Boris Karloff. Like Boris Karloff took him under his wing and basically taught him all of his Karloff tricks, right? So his performance is not just in this movie, but going forward as Frankenstein.
Do you know how many he did off the top of his
Not
head?
off the top of my head, but he did several.
That's a big history.
And they were like almost as memorable as Karloff's himself, partially because he's good and partially because Karloff was generous with like his talent and his, sharing with that, right? So I thought he was great. But the girl that gets hypnotized in this one, who kind of gets
the
like
gypsy?
drawn, I thought, and the one who ends up having to shoot him or whatever, like, I thought she did a really, really good job of making me buy that impossible job. She was an impossible job. Like, he's like, I'm going to turn into a wolf and kill everything around. She's like, I'm going to stay with you. I'm like, what? No, you're not.
Meanwhile, Daniel's over there sad boying it. Like, oh, she's in love with him.
All right, yeah. Daniel.
He was a little annoying. He's no Fritz. He's no Fritz.
Daniel was annoying. I will totally admit
Probably the worst part. Though he did have that cool. I did like when he saved the girl from getting beat. He just grabs that whip and starts lashing the dude.
Oh, totally.
Like that part, like I was rooting for.
That was pretty cool.
But then he got all weird about like she don't know you shit, dude. Where you get all sad about like?
Well, yeah.
I mean, he had his qualms with Boris Karloff because he was supposed to get into a
sure.
I do want to say this though about the.
By the way, the girl is Anne Gwynn, who's an amazing actress. She's also check this out, Chris Pine's grandmother.
No fucking way.
You ready for that? She's considered one of the very first Scream Queens.
Whoa, I didn't know that. But I do agree. I didn't mean to jump around, but where we were talking about Frankenstein. Yeah, there was just not enough room for you to
for
like,
emotional
really,
impact.
I think if we had pre-gamed with Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, then we would have gotten our fill of that. Maybe I don't know.
I've seen that, and you wouldn't.
Okay, so
the problem was that they were trying to stuff characters in, and Frankenstein doesn't. And first of all, the drop off I think is more severe because I think the original Frankenstein's monster is more emotional than Wolfman. I'm not trying to sell Wolfman short. I'm just the monster is more emotionally resonant than Wolfman, right? So you're more upset by what happens to the original Frankenstein's monster than the Wolfman, really. Or maybe it's just me. I don't know, because I also don't give a flying fuck about the guy in American Werewolf in London. Like he keeps like running around, like getting haunted by his friend and whatever. And I'm like, I mean, I feel like I could make the best of the werewolf situation, but being brought back as like a sewn together corpse, I don't know. That feels like a worse place to start from, right? But so there's a bigger drop off, but on top of that, I just feel like Frankenstein has so much less ability to express himself, than Wolfman does. And Lon Chaney Jr. is a great actor, so I felt like there was no emotional resonance with Dracula or Frankenstein. There was with Boris Karloff's character and the Wolfman, so I felt like it was kind of like hit miss,
yeah,
which feels right for this kind of.
I wonder in the movie did Dracula get more screen time than Frankenstein?
If not more, I mean, pretty close.
It's so weird that like Frankenstein's like or the monster. Well, even Frankenstein's not even in the fucking movie. So like, it's just his house. So technically, we're there.
Totally.
But it's just weird that like the other characters had more screen time than the main.
Sure.
The
main theoretical main attraction.
Yeah, the theoretical main attraction.
Right. So that part is, and then, here's the thing. I know that I'm a minority opinion in this category, but I think that Bela Lugosi's performance in Son of Frankenstein is his best performance on film, right? Better than Dracula. And the problem with this is I don't think there's any one standout performance that kind of carries this movie the way that there's no one standout amazing performance, and there's no like Bride of Frankenstein was powered by just sheer strangeness. You've never seen anything like that before. This was basically this movie is like horror Avengers for the time.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know, maybe that felt super fresh to them back then. I'm sure it did. But it felt
kind of fresh watching it today.
Right. Well, no, that part's amazing, but I don't think that they like we would nail getting emotionally like I remember watching Thor Ragnarok and being like, I can't believe they have managed to make such a ridiculous movie and keep the emotions real.
Right.
That the characters, that I believe what they were feeling and what they were trying to go achieve and like whatever, right? Because that's such a hard trick to do in such a ridiculous setting, right? So this movie has a totally ridiculous setting, and I only half believed what most of these people were trying to get done.
Yeah.
So I don't think they knew how to do that part, but you're right. It feels fresh just from the standpoint that it's just so nuts and so energetic and so over the top, and you're just not used to that when you're watching black and white.
Let me ask you this: do you think the movie would be better if they had Bela Lugosi coming back as Dracula? Do you think that would have made any difference?
I don't think in a movie this nuts that any individual change makes a difference.
I agree with you on that.
If you took, I mean, wait, that might be wrong. I don't think you could lose Lon Chaney Jr. or Karloff in this movie, right? So like, you needed what's there, but I don't think you could take any individual flaw with a movie, fix one flaw, and have a different. I feel like it just feels like the same
it's so
crazy
bonkers
movie,
that there's
but with a couple other things for us to talk about.
Yeah,
right. Like because the tidal wave of insanity heading towards us, like
there was a few transformations in the film. There was one,
yes,
with Dracula going from skeleton to like the veins and then to full human. Clothed.
Yes. Well, that happens a lot. When he turns from a bat to a Dracula, he's like in a top hat.
He's got his clothes on.
Right.
And then I think they did like one or two of the classic Wolfman transformations. But the coolest one.
Wait, hold that thought, because they did 2 Wolfman transformations, and one of them was a total cheat.
No, the cheat was the best one.
Right. I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to say the exact same thing. Like,
how cool was that?
Like visual, it would. I mean, it's a total cheat. It's so much easier to do than actually do a Wolfman transformation.
But it's smart.
But first of all, it's smart, and second of all, it felt like something you could do now. You could do that now in a movie.
I got the same thing
and pull that off.
If a modern horror movie
visually, it was so rich. It was so good looking.
And you kept in it because it kept.
It's when he's run. You're just seeing footprints, right?
Yeah, and it's the human footprints, and it keeps going, and then it's paw prints, and then you look up, and then the couple seconds you see him running in that misty forest area
and looking up the moon like it was the way this body language, like it just reaffirms in horror how important, you're in a mask, you're in a costume, you're Michael Myers, but like it makes a difference who's playing Michael Myers, right?
Yes.
Body language, you can't see this guy's face, but he looked up at the moon like he dreaded it, and it was totally his master at the same time. Like,
right.
I don't know how he conveyed that with body language, but
that chunk of the film, I think, is like quintessential horror movie visuals. Like, I think it is just the coolest goddamn thing in the whole movie. Totally. In fact, like there's a few scenes.
I think the beginning's better, but I think that is really cool. It's probably the best shot.
I think that's the single best part of the movie. Yeah. I do agree. Like the beginning with the Dracula, that's the most interesting, and then it goes off the fucking wall. But like, there's something about werewolves in horror movies that I just fucking love. Like, because like the other scene, I think Silver Bullet was on Amazon. And Alex was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I just gotta watch this one scene." And I went to the werewolf church scene, and there's just something about werewolves and like crazy atmosphere that always looks cool.
And you can see why this haunted the imaginations of people like Joe Dante and Stephen King or whatever. Why the werewolf line of horror is particularly like a weird vein for horror, because it's the one that never quite got as big as like Creature Feature or Vampire or some of the other bigger ones.
Right.
But is also really special. Like there's something really special about it when you get it right.
There's a few bigger profile werewolf movies coming out this year. Mm-hmm. So hopefully they get this right again. Yeah, but that transformation. Oh god.
So those were really good. But and this has happened with a few Creature Features, and I always appreciate it when it does. But to me, the single scariest moment in this movie, and I'm just gonna like forget this nonsense about old movies, black and white movies, they can't be scary or whatever. I'm not saying that like it rattled me the way like a Conjuring or whatever would now, because there's too much time has passed, but it's still effective. Like if you open up your imagination and you watch like in good faith, like trying to watch the movie the way it was intended, the scene where I keep forgetting this guy's name. I'm just going to call him Brian. Okay, Daniel. Where Boris Karloff and Daniel, they go and they help this coach. They've broken out of prison,
right?
And they push this carriage or series of the circus carriage out of they're stuck in a rut or mud or some kind of like thing in the road.
Yeah.
And then they get on board and they're having this conversation with this completely weird, random character.
The guy who owns, I forget his name. It's the one that Karloff ends up being. He's like, it's my brother. He died recently.
Yeah. Yes. And they're having this conversation with this guy, and he's like, whatever. And he's like, Karloff's asking him very pointed questions like, where are you traveling to next? Are you going to this city? Are you going to this city? And the guy's like, no, I'm not going to that city. You know, there's not enough money there. I'm not going to that city. They went through a horrible thing where this guy tried to put the brain in a dog, and Boris Karloff's like, oh, and then he goes, and he goes, well, are you going over here? And the guy goes, no, I'm not going over here. He goes, well, you are. And the guy's like, no, I'm not. And Karloff turns to Ted and says, and doesn't say anything. And Ted gets up to kill him, and they head towards him like it was like the finale of Freaks. All of a sudden, they're just heading towards him, and he looks up, and you just see him just. If they had moved like a half second faster, he wouldn't even realize he was getting killed because he thought like they were just having this really genial conversation, like everything was fine. I picked up some people, they helped me out, like,
right?
And all of a sudden they're killing him, and it was when they were killing him, he was like no, and I was like no, like, it was really weird that they can still be that effective at this moment. But what I appreciated in this big monster mash was the scariest moment was just two criminals killing someone as part of like a plan they were improvising, because that literally is happening right now while we speak in like some alleyway like 5 miles from here, and the fact that
hope further
50 miles
there we go.
So but you know what I mean, like it's the fact that is so universal, and they were brave enough to kind of write it well and act it where it felt real. It's those kind of things when a filmmaker is good enough to anchor all the zaniness with real little dark jewels like that. I love it. It's amazing.
It's weird. Two things. One, it's weird that you got Freaks vibes too, because I think it was like something about wagons, because there's a lot of wagons and Freaks.
Totally.
But do you think the monsters work better as like background pieces, or in like not background pieces? That's not what I wanted to say. Like when the story isn't about them, but like they're in that world, and like they have like sort of minor roles, like the way I think Dracula was a minor character in this one. Like, do you think they work better like that? Like it was basically Boris Karloff, Daniel trying to do their thing, and then they run into Dracula, or they accidentally discover his corpse, and then they stumble upon Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman. Like, do you think the monsters work better in that way, or does it depend story to story?
Yeah, I think it's story to story. The thing is that there's an art to getting multiples in and keeping it straight, and so like imagine the original Frankenstein or the original Dracula, and then just insert another monster plot in there. And it changes everything. Right. Like it's the difference between singular and the plural monsters. Like that's a whole different vibe. Right. So, you know, I feel like there's a special way to execute that, which is probably like the Monster Squad, you know, kind of style. If you're going for sort of the comedic edge, and then I don't know, maybe like the kaiju, like I don't like, you know, I know there's multiples in the Godzilla franchise, or like things like Pacific Rim or whatever, where it doesn't bother me there's a lot of things going on, you know?
Yeah.
Where I don't mind that I'm not just focusing on one villain or one monster. So I think there's a real trick to getting that right, and I think it's more about who's doing it and how well they understand what they're doing, and less about the monsters themselves. You know?
Yeah. I just think it's so fun to have more than one monster on the screen. That's why, like, I think Batman Returns is the better one. I mean, you get
and that's what I'm saying, is that the difference between the singular Joker in Batman, you know, Tim Burton's original one, and then Batman Returns. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is you have to present the movie differently, because now you're following these multiple villains, right? And
well, technically you get 3, because you get
totally
Christopher Walken too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, now I want to go back and watch those old monster movies. You know what I was thinking though is like how I think this movie would have been a little bit better if we had watched it at the Egyptian. This seemed like this seemed like an Egyptian theater type film.
Yeah, like in a sequence, like one of three, or there for a marathon. It's slightly cool LA night. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Well, today it was pretty fucking chilly, so like it was kind of nice because it was like kind of dark. I was like, oh fuck yeah, it kind of feels like fall out. And so like it was nice. It was perfect. It was the closest. It was the best circumstances to have watched this movie. So
a couple nuggets outside the movie itself, just kind of like on the thread of how this was going, right? So the entire Universal Monster mashup thing started with a joke, and the joke is so bad that I can't believe, first of all, that it started anything, and second of all, it just makes me glad that these people weren't writing comedies, that they were writing horror movies, because Kurt Sienomak, who's an amazing guy, he actually wrote that that incredible The Wolfsbane saying that they say.
Oh, that little poem,
little poem that. So they were joking about, what do we do next in the monster series before anyone had conceived of putting them together. And he goes, let's just put a couple of them together. He goes, we'll make a movie. We'll call it Frankenstein Wolf's the Meat Man. And he was just
Frankenstein Wolf's the Meat Man.
He was just kidding. And when he said it, the producer the director was like, okay. So he was like, let's think about that. He just a throwaway dumb joke, and they were like, okay, let's maybe turn this into an idea, and it became a movie, which that's Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, but it turned the whole
sentence just blew my mind. I was like, that doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It's not funny, and it makes no sense at all.
Dude, and that's like you kept talking, and then I was like, I let so you kept talking, and like that just like was percolating, and I was like, wait a minute, am I having a stroke? Let me just clarify that is exactly what we said.
It makes no sense at all. Which is bizarre.
What the fuck?
So then Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein comes along way later.
Costello and Abbott meet Man.
And believe it or not, I think I knew it vaguely, but I don't think, the number is kind of like eye-catching to me, is that Bela Lugosi went 17 years between playing Dracula. He played Dracula in 31, and then he didn't play Dracula again all the way until Abbott and Costello.
You can tell he's a little bloated.
Right. But that's amazing to me, because that would never happen in a million years now. Imagine like Robert Downey Jr. playing Iron Man, and then 17 years later playing Iron Man again. That's not even a thing, right? Like, so the fact that he never even got around to that, but that it came in such a weird entry later on, like this weird comedy that's actually kind of a legitimately
I think the closest thing to that
movie
is Nick Castle.
Totally.
But I don't think he played all of Michael Myers in this new one, right?
Right. No. Yeah.
But like,
and it's not even. He's playing, but he's not. He's just there.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Like, it's not like
So I thought that was interesting. And then what was also interesting was that the first, I had no idea this was a thing. But the very first appearance so they started to really think about a shared universe and multiple monsters. And they were like, we want to introduce the Invisible Man in a stinger at the end of a movie so that he can get his own movie later.
Oh my God.
They were seeding the ground. And you know who played, uncredited, the Invisible Man in the stinger at the end of the movie to you ready? I'm going to play it for you. This is it. This is what happens.
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the Invisible Man.
This was supposed to be in the film?
No, this is at the end of I think it's Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, but it was it couldn't have been, because they were setting up Invisible Man. But regardless, the first appearance of Invisible Man in Universal isn't the Invisible Man movie. It's Vincent Price doing an uncredited voice to let you know that the Invisible Man was going to be a thing, right? But the fact that they were doing it,
God,
Marvel style, first of all, blows my mind. But second of all, makes me think that's the only way to do shared shit is this way, right? Like, everyone finds their same way to the same solution. It's like when inventors invent the same thing across the planet and they're not even talking to each other, like in the same month or something,
right?
Like, this is just must be the way you have to do shared, mashup universes, right?
Could you imagine? Because Claude Rains and Vincent Price have like very distinctive voices, and I would have been happy with either one.
Totally. Now, you are an incredible stand-up comedian, so I thought you would appreciate this. On Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein, Lon Chaney Jr. hated it. He thought it was a mockery of the monsters. Everyone else was cool with it, but he hated it. He thought it was like making fun of the monsters, and he probably saw ahead that eventually they're going to end up being like Boo Berry and Count Chocula, like whatever. He didn't want it to go that direction, which is an argument. I can see it either way, right? But to keep that vibe going for the movie, because when you're shooting Gothic and all that, like the mist and the fog, whatever, it's supposed to be spooky. Like the original Frankenstein scared the shit out of people at the time, right? So when it was such a weird, jarring vibe with Abbott Costello running around in something that's supposed to be scary. So to keep it right, they had to hire a stand-up comedian to be on set. And in between takes, he was like riffing, telling jokes, or whatever. And then when he ran out of jokes, he would just start like pie fights. So they were literally like throwing shit at each other. And then like, all right, now we're 5 minutes, let's shoot. And they would go shoot, like whatever. So the energy on that set during that shoot must have been totally insane, right?
That had to be so fucking fun.
But I mean, I just think that the whole vibe of the mashup thing is, you know, I think that's the one thing, if you take away nothing else from this podcast from my end or whatever, the thing that I mean, besides the fact that I think the first third of this movie is legitimately great, is that people think that old classic movies are either boring or played out or cliched or corny, or they have no teeth. They have, they can't scare you. They can't whatever. They can't thrill you. They can't surprise you. So all of that is wrong. But you know, one thing that's about this is that it's just the sheer energetic insanity of the whole concept is so interesting when you frame it in that black and white boring like thing. Because if you go into the right mindset, like, it is not boring. It's nuts. It's totally nuts. And it was nuts in House of Frankenstein. It also becomes nuts in House of Dracula. And then it stayed nuts all the way through Abbott and Costello Frankenstein. I mean, these people were just
I want to watch
doing some really weird things. So I just thought that part was great. And I love that this kind of led to that kind of insanity. I do miss a little bit of the gravitas of the fear of like the original Dracula and Frankenstein, and even Bride of Frankenstein, which was funny but also horrifying. But there's a room for this too, and I thought this was a really good version.
I wonder why they just don't do them like this now.
I mean, aren't they? Isn't that what we watch all the time? Is these monster mixed?
Nah, when's the last time you saw? I mean, like Penny Dreadful's probably the last time, which is why that new trailer made me sad. Like, I'm still gonna watch it, but
yeah, that's true. Oh, well, good point. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Because like
we don't get that,
because Universal's really screwed the pooch with the mummy thing.
Totally.
Oh well, we do have Invisible Man coming out, and I'm really curious to see how that is gonna play out. Because we did a live in the group, and everyone was like, if you're not in our Facebook group, join it, because we do fun shit over there. And we were like going through this year's horror films and like guessing what their Rotten Tomato score is going to be, just to see like what the year. And a lot of it looks really good, but when it came to the Invisible Man, like everyone was guessing like, and even myself, like 50, 60. Like it wasn't like really exciting. And I don't know I just don't know why. Like maybe I'm wrong.
It might. Here's the thing. So I think it's harder to do it in a way that's actually scary. And I think if you go back like big picture for a second and think about, you know, be the parent here for a second. Like you tell everyone you love all 5 of your kids equally, but you don't. Like there's that one favorite, you know it, everyone knows it, no one will admit it. But
or the four you like and the one you just can't stand.
Right, exactly. Either way, but if you look at the monster mashup series that starts with Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and kind of how people have tried to do that or duplicate it or do it in different versions of it, the most successful iterations later for Universal are comedic. I think the two most successful versions of this that were attempted later were Monster Squad and the Mummy series, the Brendan Fraser one.
Yeah.
Right? I think those are the two most successful versions of this. They're better than Tom Cruise's Mummy or Dracula Untold or any other attempts to try to carry the Universal legacy forward. The only one that kind of even moved this needle for me is the 2010 Wolfman, which I thought was a noble effort.
Not that it's connected, but you were pretty wild. I still haven't seen it. The new Dracula.
Yeah. So now the BBC Dracula, I think.
You think he's a contender?
I think. Well, it's a different thing because he
Right.
is so the sole villain. I mean, he dominates. That actor just dominates. Well, not true. Him and the person playing Van Helsing dominate, but it's really it's a really good James Bond movie where you got like Bond versus Donald Pleasance or Bond versus Christoph Waltz or whatever. It's that feeling. And that's what the BBC Dracula. It's Dracula versus Van Helsing all the way through. There's no other monsters. There's no focus.
Does he do the eye thing through the window?
Nobody turns into anything else interesting. It's not like a Fright Night where you got, You're So Cool Brewster. It's not Salem's Lot where you got the kid floating in the window. There's no other memorable characters. It's literally these two for 3 episodes, right? So it's a totally different vibe than this movie that we're doing now. And that's what I mean is I think when you stuff it with a lot of characters, it's easier to do comedic. It's so rare to get it right where you've got a thing full of different kinds of characters and villains, which is why, like, for example, Trick or Treat is such a miracle, right? Trick or Treat, because it has multiple villains in it, right? And somehow they don't rob from each other. Somehow they're all memorable. They're not, like whatever. There's an amazing anecdote about Claude Rains, the legend who played Invisible Man and the incredible character played in Hitchcock's Notorious, among a million other things. But actors hated working with him because he would box you out of the camera. Like he wouldn't tell you, he wouldn't warn anyone, but he would get in your personal space as an actor. You'd do a scene, and then he would push your foot with his foot, and he'd edge over. And he was trying to dominate the screen. He didn't want to share with anyone. Like he was literally trying to put the director would be like, "Wait, I'm only seeing half of the actress now." And he'd go,
So what did he say? Like, hey, here's a picture. We don't even fucking see it. You are gone.
Totally, he thought of him as the Claude Rains show, right? Like he whatever. So he wasn't having like the sharing thing, and. But it's funny, but like think about it. When these people went into this, like Lon Chaney Jr. had like 4 minutes to convey humanity, pathos, fright, like intimidation, all the emotions he was supposed to pack into a thing. And John Carradine over there as Dracula had this 4 minutes too, and they're sort of competing, right? So when you've got that dynamic, you got I don't know.
You know who could do it today? Taika Waititi, is that how you say his name? What We Do in the Shadows.
I don't know how to say his name, but he could.
Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, for sure.
Because like What We Do in the Shadows had werewolves and vampires, so all you gotta do is
But that's what I'm saying.
And zombies.
It works comedically. It's so hard to do straight. Right?
That's because the people who try to do it serious, Penny Dreadful, as much as I wish the new one had all the monsters and all that stuff. I didn't fucking finish the 3rd season because it wasn't that good of a show.
Right. Well, there you go.
So I think you're right. I think these like multiple monster mashups have to be done comedic because like Trick or Treat has the werewolves, has the kids coming back like zombie creatures or whatever.
Totally. And
it has Sam, so it's got a bunch of monsters, but like it also has a lot of comedic elements into it.
Totally.
Horror comedy.
But my first in the BBC Dracula, when he consumes you, he also gets basically all your memories, all your skill base, all your knowledge. That's how they cheat. Basically, like when they transport them into modern times for a part of the storytelling of that show, and he knows how to use phones and text or whatever because he eats someone who is modern. So now he has their like whatever. So like, matter of fact, he starts telling this one woman all this stuff about her dead husband that he destroyed, and she's like, "How did you learn all this?" And he's like, "Orally."
Oh my god, I gotta watch it.
So it's amazing. So like, but that's kind of like the premise of it, right? If you take that premise and you're like, my flavor for Trick or Treat, if I ate Trick or Treat. Like the flavor, because Dracula does it in the BBC Dracula. He's like, telephone. Like he's thinking, but he's thinking by tasting, right? So like if I was tasting Trick or Treat, comedy's not the first thing that pops into my mind.
No.
It's
like third or fourth.
The atmosphere and the scares and just the coolness
And the acting.
and the acting.
Yeah.
Like freaking Brian Cox is in this movie, like
Was
dominating.
he the guy who just won a Golden Globe for
I don't-
Succession? Is that him?
Yes, totally him. He's the one in Autopsy of Jane Doe. He was in Manhunter. He was amazing.
Right.
He's just an amazing actor. But the point is, the first flavor isn't comedy. And when I taste Monster Squad, that's the first thing I remember. I remember cool design and atmosphere, but equally I remember that, and obviously what we do in the shadows and all those other.
What we do in the Shadows comedies first.
Right.
For that.
I mean,
one.
almost all
Yeah.
of them. When you think about the Brendan Fraser's Mummy, almost all of them. If there's a monster mashup, and it's modern, it's usually comedy. So like that, or that's like in the top couple adjectives you think about for it. So I just think it's hard to do right, which makes me really excited to have someone just pull that off. I want to see someone come in and do a really serious, dark, version of which. I mean, Penny Dreadful sort of did that for a little bit for a time.
Yeah, but it
At
did.
the
But
beginning.
it didn't. Maybe if they had maybe
it
they
got
had
funny
added some
fast.
comedy to it, it would have been better.
Yeah,
though
totally.
they had some so they wanted to get pretty serious pretty quick. But Penny Dreadful had to when they first introduced Frankenstein, and he's talking about like the river of life, and he wants to reverse the flow. You're like, oh, that shit's great.
That's what I'm saying.
This is a loaded baked potato of an episode.
I know
Jesus Christ.
it's hard to do, but back to this movie. This movie does it. This movie, for its time, if you take off the layers of being a modern viewer and you just go into it with the right spirit, this movie is as thrilling as it is funny. It's as atmospheric as it is, serious. Like it's the flavor of this movie is really, really good. Except for the places where it completely falls down.
The one thing we didn't mention is that I think in order to make this work, you just have to go as bonkers as they did.
Yes, totally.
Like, if you're going to do a monster mashup, do a fucking monster mashup.
Yeah, totally.
Don't try to, Avengers it and be, serious. Be like, no, this is the Wolfman. This is the creature from Black Lagoon. This is the monster, the Invisible Man. Fucking throw in the bride. I say if you can, swing by France, get the Phantom.
Let's be honest. That's the arc of all of these, right? Like Godzilla, there's nothing more serious than the original Godzilla. It's the most serious movie ever made. Right?
was pretty serious.
People think it's ridiculous, but it's not.
When we watched it for Criterion, I was like, oh, I get it.
That movie is so bleak and so intense and so whatever. And then Godzilla's juggling and flying and whatever and fighting 16 monsters or whatever. That's the arc. I think that's kind of just how that has to go, right? So, but anyway, I love this movie. I especially recommend the first third of it. Let us know what you think of House of Frankenstein. Anything else before we wrap?
I think you could do this. If they remade this film today, I can tell you the one core element that would make this movie hilarious.
What's that?
Tons of gore. Imagine if someone dies hysterically and just gore everywhere.
That would be.
I think that would be the key. Okay, so this was
55%.
This is good. I feel like we're getting back on track.
Oh yeah, right. We haven't rated, so let's do the rating.
Okay. Honestly, the ending's the worst part because Frankenstein's monster just grabs Karloff and then they just run into some quicksand. A dude actually throws a torch at them while they're running on the stairs and it almost hits Karloff. I'm like, who the fuck gave him that direction? And then they go into the quicksand and it just ends. So the ending is really unsatisfying.
The ending's really abrupt. That happened a lot back then. Oh, and I didn't even tell you my surprise. Oh, yeah. The director, Earl Kenton, is the director of Island of Lost Souls.
No way.
Which is one of the best horror movies of the 30s. So,
wow.
So, and I did not know that going into this, and that explains a lot of why I was so enjoying this when it started. Because he must have that fingerprint. He must be just one of those directors I really like. But
and that was Karloff too, right?
No, that was Lugosi. That was the Are We Not Men? That's right. The Charles Lawton.
Wow. Okay, so 55%.
Yes.
The end. I think the ending is probably what chunks off a lot of the score for me.
Sure.
But I would honestly, put this at 60%. I would make it just fresh. I wouldn't go anywhere crazy above that. Because I did find it super enjoyable. It was nothing groundbreaking. It wasn't like we watched what was a Harakiri.
Yeah,
it wasn't like some classic masterpiece.
Right, no.
But it was so bonkers and so it was weird. And it was my first monster match. Maybe there's better monster matchups, but I haven't seen it yet. So I feel really comfortable at saying it's 60%. And I would recommend, if you like other classic horror movie monsters, I would be give this a shot. It's not going to be Frankenstein. It's not going to be Dracula.
Right.
But you're gonna enjoy it.
Well, let's take a quick look. I know. Let's take a real quick look at its neighborhood, right? So here's the thing: before I cheat and look at its neighborhood, I'm going to be honest and tell you that I think I would probably just leave it at 55%.
That was my
Not even like an insult towards it, because I don't even think that's an insult. Like I think a movie that old that stays good enough to be better than average is a. I mean, they made this movie before World War II ended. Right.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I think that's a pretty good, acquittal of its talent for the movie, but it feels about half as good as Frankenstein.
Yeah,
Right.
I
And
agree
Frankenstein, I'm
100%.
assuming, is 100%. So like, I
Yeah.
would imagine that 55% is somewhere around the ballpark.
I think that's fair.
That I would put it, but I think that the first, I've never done this before, but I think the first third of the movie is an 80% movie. Right. I feel like it doesn't really go downhill until that hard turn where we start getting musical numbers and dance sequences and like some weird stuff happens and then like whatever. So in the do we want to do in the horror neighborhood or just anywhere?
Just do in the regular neighborhood, because that's
in the
opens
horror
it up.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Or anyway, in neighborhood. All right. So let's see what the most famous movies in this neighborhood are. So I can already spotted a movie that was blowing my mind. It's 55%. Okay. So
What's that movie?
So this movie is, well, hold on. I'm saving that for a moment because
okay.
I want to see what other choices there are. Because I haven't heard a lot of these movies. All right. So in the horror realm, and not surprisingly, in terms of, I know we know this because we already did this movie for the first How Low We Go, but The Craft is down here.
That is stupid. That is,
and The Craft is better than this movie.
The Craft is way better.
So that's that.
The Craft is so good. Why it's 55% is so bonkers.
Which explains why we picked The Craft first for the for the first How Low We Go.
Right.
Ocean's 12, which I've never seen, is a 55% film.
I liked that one.
Okay. And that feels like just about right for House of Frankenstein and Ocean's 12. They feel like kind of equally. This is the one that was blowing my mind. I'm just going to go to it because I don't recognize a lot of the other ones. Top Gun.
Whoa.
The original Top Gun is 55%.
Get out of here.
And you know what? I think that's right. I think that movie and this movie are about the same level of entertainment.
I think this movie's good. I remember my friends, we rented Top Gun.
It's just if you're a horror fan, you'll like this movie.
Yeah, I remember we rented Top Gun, and I was like, man, a lot of this is really boring.
Right?
It's not that interesting.
And the only other one I got for you is Elm Street 4. And that feels like a worse movie than House of Frankenstein. So,
it is a worse movie than House
so
of Frankenstein.
I think we're good. I think it sits somewhere between 55 and 60%.
I think that's perfect.
But I think the good news is that, because the thing we're dreading is as we go down low on the How Low Can We Go scale, where the movies really start to feel like they might even be lower than where they are.
I remember
and
that
this
feeling.
movie is not doing that. This movie just kicked it. So picture not fresh on Rotten Tomato as quicksand. This movie has got its head right above the quicksand.
Right above
taking a deep breath.
Right above it. And then it ends abruptly.
And then it's abruptly.
Okay, well, I think those ratings make a lot of sense. I agree with that 100%. So let us know what you guys think. If you've seen the movie, if you like the monster mashups. And then if you have any suggestions while we're going down this list for the second time, we're going to need some guidance on the second time. That first one got rough. It got rough around like 30%.
It did. But here's the good news. A lot of movies have come out since we did that. There are some movies that have come out that are adding to our possibilities here, and I've got my eye on a couple of them that look really promising for this list. So,
you know what? And I think this is the most, well, not universal, but classic monsters ones that we've had on our list, because we did that one. What's his name? Jack something's Dracula.
Yes,
we did that
Jack
one.
Palance, yeah.
We got this one. I'm curious how many classic monster movies are going to make it on our list. Is the old Blob? No, that's got to be higher rated. No, not the old Blob.
The old Blob?
Yeah, what's the old Blob rated?
Oh, I don't know, but
like the 50s
it should be
one?
higher rated.
I have a feeling. I think it should be, but I have a feeling it's probably not, though.
Pretty damn good movie. Let's take a look.
I'm guessing
because the new Blob should be like 90%. So like
I'm guessing
it's 66.
Just above. All right. Well, I've never seen that one, so I was like, oh, that'd be fun to do that one. All right. Well, we'll have to do we'll have to do fresh to freshest and then but degrade all the films. Like this one doesn't deserve to be here. Just a bunch of bullshit. All right, well, cool. This was a fun one. I really like it. Can't wait to see what we have next. Give us a review on iTunes if you love this episode, and we will talk to you next time. Bye, guys.